The Weissbruck Canal. Truly a good example of the modern world. Whilst the rivers of the Empire are key to trade and travel, they are not always the most direct, naturally. Hence the man-made canals that offer more direct routes. The Weissbruck Canal itself, I do believe, was completed roughly in the year 2462 to carry coal and iron from the mines at Delftgruber directly to Altdorf, in an attempt to avoid the heavy tolls they have in Karlsburg. Of course, it was originally designed to accommodate narrow barges towed by horses, but the owners have since opened the canal to barges of all kinds to increase toll revenues. Still, a lot of the little villages and towns along that route are certainly benefiting from the more direct river travel and trade. Although I have heard that even places like the Weissbruck Canal are not completely safe. Best to bring a few people with you if you're travelling down that way. You don't want to run into a foul beast or something worse. This is Red Moon role-playing. It has taken the crew of the Beribel roughly 3 days of travel to get all the way down from one end of the Weissbruck Canal to the other. This means they are now slowly drawing into the port of the town of Weissbruck itself, situated just at the end of the canal and then connecting to the natural river, the River Bogan. The journey has been uneventful, for the most part. The Weissbruck Canal is, after all, quite a small canal, at several points only really wide enough for one boat the size of the barge to go down at a time. There are, of course, several little fishing ports and fishing villages to stop off at, to allow a little bit of boat manoeuvring, but there have been a few small fishing skiffs that have shouted at the crew, telling them, "Get that large barge off the river." To this, the captain, Josef, has simply smiled, waved his hand, and of course eventually got his barge out the way. Other than that, it has been a rather peaceful river journey. 3 days. Tell us, Kruger, what have you done in the last 3 days on this lovely little river barge going down the canal?
I have tried to make myself useful, having not exactly been able to contribute very much when we first started. So I've been trying to learn from Heinrich about what you're supposed to do on a barge like this and how to be useful. Because I figure we might be on this one for quite a while. So that is really what I've been focused on. Working hard and trying to pull my weight.
Indeed. Luckily, you haven't had to do too much. The crew of the Beribel are quite competent at moving their barge down the river. The Beribel is an impressive barge. There is a large area at the front where currently large stacks of cargo have been placed, largely Bretonian brandy and pork, you've been told. There is the main cabin, which connects to several other smaller cabins. This composes of the main bulk of the boat in the middle. There is also beneath that, in the boat itself, another area for storage, and that is where some extra beds have been placed for you free to be sleeping in. Although, luckily, you haven't been sleeping on the boat every night. As I said, there have been several stops along the way at little fishing ports, so there have been a few nights where you've at least slept off the boat. Although, to be fair, the beds that have been made for you are not uncomfortable, and the river journey is slow and temperate, so it's not like a ocean journey where you may have had a little bit of seasickness. What about yourself, Siegfrieda? 3 days on a reasonably pleasant barge journey.
Well, have I actually been put to work at all? It seems that if the journey has been eventless, I would have probably been able to stay in my cabin or on deck if I felt like it, reading my books.
Yes, to be frank, other than a couple of calls to dinner, which the captain is very keen on having everyone have a dinner together, you haven't really been put to work. The crew loaded up all the cargo. It's all going to be dropped off at Weissbruck and Bogenhafen, so with that all done, it's just been a case of moving the barge along. Josef tends to stand at the back of the boat, controlling the wheel. The others get big sticks ready, just in case the boat needs a bit of a push if the wind's not very good, but otherwise the sails have been pushing your boat along at quite a pleasant pace.
Well, I've been plagued with some anxiety, just a little, in the sense that I haven't been back to Bogenhafen since I was a child, since I was initially sold from there to the physician who became my unwilling mentor. And so, as part of my studies, I keep a few books on my person at all times. I probably walk around looking like a mobile library. And I am flicking through back to my notes that I have made over the years about Bogenhafen. Pointedly, never about my family. I've always wanted to research the businesses, the faith that holds precedent there, the festival that takes place, of course, every year. I want to know about Bogenhafen. That's true, but there's a limit to how much I want to know. And I'm not entirely certain that I'm cognizant of my applying that limitation. I kind of skirt around the topic of family and origins whenever it gets approached. Whenever I may just grow close to it in my research, I move on to something else, but something constantly draws me back to looking at Bogenhafen. So, arriving in Weissbruck is a relief. I will be glad to have some solid ground underneath me, but I'm also likely to be trying to find out more about our destination, who we might come across. I have no fears of anyone recognising me. It's been nearly 20 years since I left, but yeah, there's still a niggling feeling at the back of my head that it may open some old wounds.
Well, on the journey so far, it's not difficult to get a little bit of basic information. After all, Joseph is happy to speak, as is Walder. Grim isn't necessarily unfriendly, he just tends to respond to things in single-word syllables, so the conversation is often a little harder there. But basic information on Bogenhafen, of how it's run today, is quite easy to get. You will have learnt that, yes, Bogenhafen, flourishing port town, very important merchant town. Currently run, in fact, by merchants, pretty much. Even though it is part of the Duchy of Sappenheim, the Duke himself apparently doesn't really run matters. It's actually a council. The council is made up of several individuals of the town, but currently, well over at least 4 or 5 of them are merchants. And all those merchants are members, of course, of the Merchants' Guild. The town also has several guilds represented there. Guilds in this world are often not unanimous. It's not like one person runs all the guilds. It's more that every town and every city has a guild run by people who live in that town or city. And in this case, the Merchants' Guild is one of the most powerful guilds in the town of Bogenhafen. But there are other guilds as well. The Stevedores Guild, the Physicians' Guild, to speak of a few. And yes, the town is looking forward to the Schaffenfest. Schaffenfest brings an awful lot of traffic to Bogenhafen, happens every year, and lots of people look forward to it. It's a very good place to make money if you are a merchant or interested in cattle.
Well, while I'm not terribly interested in cattle or mercantile enterprises, I'm increasingly concerned as we are approaching with our fraud. It seemed like a fantastic idea at the time, and I can confess to being caught up in the excitement of pulling off this deception and walking away with more crowns than we can carry. But since running into now more than one case of mistaken identity, not even at our destination, and knowing the number of people that are going to be there for the Schaffenfest, I am... yeah, concerned is an understatement. I can see this all going horribly wrong, and I'm not of a mind to abandon my companions by any means, but I will have been the voice of dissent for the past few days of travel, just occasionally murmuring, I think we're sailing into the mouth of trouble.
Indeed. But what of you, Heinrich? Have these words caused you to lose faith in your mission to gain a vast fortune?
Absolutely not. I've grown to appreciate Siegfrieda over the days that we've spent together. I'm grateful for her intellect, for the horror with which she approaches a great many ordinary things. But being dour, I don't know, it's not for me. So every time that she articulates a worry or a concern or a hypothetical problem, all I can think about is how we won't have to deal with any of those problems when we've got tens of thousands of crowns.
Indeed. And how do you spend the days yourself? After all, for a moment, this is almost like the old days. You're on a barge, you're with river folk, hell, you're with Joseph. How are you feeling? What are you doing?
It is, in a way, refreshing. I will confess, part of the appeal of the duelist's path for me was getting out of the nowheresvilles in between the main cities of the Empire and being able to see a life that's more than reeds and water and muck. But there's something nice about just honest labor. That is where I'm devoting most of my energy. One, because despite Joseph assuring me that there's no need to go out of my way to make amends for the mess on the dock, I still feel a little guilty about that. And for two, I've seen how Kruger handles himself with cargo and shipcraft, so I need to be pulling the weight if the three of us are going to be paid.
Indeed, and you have pulled your weight, but again, luckily it's been a rather pleasant journey. You've been down the canal before as a child, you know this route again, and not much happens on the canal. It's designed to be a nice quick route round, much quicker than going all the way round the Reich and then all the way down the Bogan. There is a toll, of course, 2 gold crowns on either end. It's an expensive place to come down, but for barges like the Berabel, this is a standard trip, and the expenses are often taken into account. And so the Berabel begins to draw into the dock of Weissbruck, passing by the 2 locks that are opened for it, so you get off the canal and finally join the River Bogan. The Berabel begins to draw into the port. It is currently approaching late evening. The sun is still up, but it soon will be dark. Joseph comes to the forefront of the deck, looking over the crates of cargo for a moment, and then looking at all of you who is assembled. Hi, friends! Well, here we finally are. From here, hopefully if all goes well, another 4 days to Bogenhafen, but this is a good spot to stop off for a bit, maybe board the ashore for a moment. There's some good inns around here. And he gestures to the seafront, where you can indeed see several inns have been situated very close to the docks themselves.
Well, we must thank you for the safe journey so far, Joseph. It's been a peaceful travelling. Out of interest, does the canal often get, well, so hectic? Not that it was in this case, but is there ever trouble on these waters, or is it always such plain sailing?
Aye, well, as you saw, there were a few skiffs who weren't very happy with me. But that's always the way. There's not enough space on the canal all the time for ships to go past each other, not unless you do an awful lot of berthing on the shoreline there. No, that's why you stop off at places like Weissbruck, as you can see. A lot more space here. Keeps the traffic flowing. They didn't always have this place, you know. I think they, about 20, 30 years ago when I was a young man, they hadn't fully extended the canal, you know, yet, so it was a lot more busy back then. He does indeed go on for a few more sentences about various river history.
I do listen to that with interest. I mean, it's a completely different world to the one that I come from. And learning about this, the history of the river folk, of what Heinrich must have been going through when he grew up with all this. It's fascinating, actually. I find myself thinking about how life could have been if I would have been growing up under such circumstances. Would my life be different? Would I have been a different person then?
It is something to think on, after all. There is a difference out here. There is something about the rivers where people seem a lot more willing just to help each other out. It's not always peaceful, of course. You did see a river warden patrol at one point. There is a reason they exist. Some of the rivers in the old world are very, very unsafe. But this close to Altdorf, the Weissbruck Canal is a relatively safe journey. Joseph looks to the port and says to everyone, Right, let me not be forgetting your money. I know you say you haven't done much, Heinrich, but, well, you know, honest day's work, honest day's pay. Here you go, friends. And he hands each of you a little pouch containing 6 silver shillings.
I accept very humbly. Thank you so much. I know I'm not, quite pulling my weight yet, but I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to learn.
I know, lad. I won't hear anything of it. You've been pulling your weight. You've been doing a good job. Isn't that right, Heinrich? We'll make a boatman out of this one yet. Ha ha.
Teach him a few knots and how to hold his liquor. Yeah, I'd say so. I'll give him a clap on the back.
Anyway, I reckon Grim and Walder will be staying on board the boat. I'm gonna go have a bit of a kip, but you two free, go and treat yourself in town. If you want, up to you. I have actually got a little bit of cargo to deliver, so, Walder with a big, thick, black hair, with a little sailor's band on, comes over and begins helping Grim unload a crate or two. You notice some stevedores approach the boat and begin helping unload some of this cargo. They are quite well-built individuals, one of them very bold, one of them with a bit of a scar on his face. But they seem pleasant enough, although they are looking over the boat in a slightly suspicious manner. But they begin unloading the cargo, nothing unusual there. You think to yourself, Kruger, what do the 3 of you do? You are here in the town of Weissbruck. Weissbruck is no Bogenhafen, that is for sure, but it is a fledgling town, doing quite well for itself. You're only going to be here for the night, before leaving, but if you want to go and have a little explore, you can.
Well, before we do, as much as I'm not exactly the biggest fan of hefty manual work, I've hauled a body here and there before, but crates and barrels are quite something different. We have been paid for this passage for our work, and Joseph seems a delightful, kind individual. It would only be right that we help out with this unloading, so it's not just his full-time sailors that have to do all the work. I will volunteer and say, Joseph, is there anything that we can help take off your hands and onto the shore?
You're a kind lass, you're a good lass. Oh, all right then, help them load up that last crate. Again, just a small delivery here in Weissbruck. Simple job. 10 gold crowns for the 2 crates. Not too bad, eh?
No, not at all. Now, what do they contain, do you know?
I believe these would be the salted pork. I'm selling most of it down the Schaffenfest, but
Well, come on then, boys. Let's get this salted pork onto solid ground.
Definitely, I say very eagerly, let's do it. I'm also very much looking forward to getting ashore, getting off the boat. There's lovely people on the boat, of course, but it does get a little bit cramped, It's nice to be able to sort of spread your wings, at least a little bit. So I will eagerly join them as we start pushing these and moving these crates then to their destination.
You're under no time pressure, and you've got plenty of help, so this is quite simple. You simply begin helping load off these crates, and then one of the stevedores comes forward and gives a pouch to Joseph, apparently having been authorized to make the payment for the job. The 3 stevedores give you a bit of a look, but they don't say anything, and then they just begin walking off, the job complete. As you watch them go, though, Kruger, would you like to make a perception roll?
That's 23 against 43, so that's 2 success levels.
As you watch them go, you do just find your attention drifting to the nearest inn. It's quite a large building, 2 stories. You can hear from inside the sounds of people drinking, settling in for the evening. The sun is, after all, beginning to set. And you notice something. There's a man. He's been watching the boat. He's been watching you. You just realize that he's been there for maybe a couple of minutes as you were unloading a crate. And he hasn't noticed you, but you notice him. It's the man from Altdorf. The one with the broken nose and the scar on the right-hand side. He's by the inn. And as he turns to walk inside the inn, slowly, you notice a large crossbow strapped to his back. What do you do, Kruger?
I instinctively try to find some cover, just in case he would turn around, just to make sure that I'm not being seen. But as he's turning away, I look to the others and I can see if I can catch their attention.
You do so.
I don't mean to alarm you, but there's a man here with a crossbow, and I happened to meet that man in Altdorf. I think he might be responsible for, well, what happened. They might have realized that this is where we were going and beaten us here. I think we had better watch ourselves.
I'm cocking an eyebrow. Watch ourselves, or find some answers.
I look at you with interest. Well, that is, of course, another approach. I must confess that I would certainly enjoy some answers to what it is that's going on and why they are following me. I mean, I have some ideas, but it feels like this is bigger than just Casterlieberung and the manor and the crowns. Something tells me there's more to this. Perhaps we can see if we can, well, get to spend some time with this man and perhaps have a conversation.
What do you think, Siegfrieda? Indulge your curiosity, take the initiative for once? If this man's going to follow us up and down the river, I'd prefer to be the one shooting crossbow bolts at least, half the time.
If he's already staring at the boat, he knows we're here, so he needs to do something about it. Not exactly in favour of taking a life if you can convince someone to turn the other way, but to do that we need to speak to him, or at least follow him. So, for want of something better to do in Weissbruck, I suppose we should get acquainted with our stalker. He must have rode here at some pace. Rode? Ridden? She looks at Kruger and Heinrich. Sat a horse and galloped.
I nod enthusiastically. Well, yeah, so we should have a conversation. I mean, what happened, and I'm trying to just remember back now. This man, the crossbows, they were never aimed at us, right? They were never shooting at us directly, were they?
Well, you're not entirely sure. Why don't you roll an intuition check?
That is 71, which is a failure. I'll use a fortune here, because I really do want to know what's going on. Alas, that is 57 against 43, so that is a failure.
Well, the problem is, he was shooting at you, wasn't he? I mean, okay, he hit those other two people first, but, I mean, maybe you would have been shot seconds later. You did, after all, immediately duck down in cover, if you remember right. Granted, there weren't many more shots afterwards, but then the patrol was coming, so maybe this person didn't want to be seen. Also, you have to admit, even though it's very logical that this is the man with the crossbow, you didn't actually see this man shooting at you. You did see this man, though, talking to those people before. Or rather, he didn't talk to them, he just led them away from where you were. This is very confusing, Kruger. You're not 100% sure of any of these deductions, really.
No, I don't feel... He might be on our side, but he might definitely not be. And, well, my senses tell me that we have to be very, very careful and scrutinize everything that he will say, because he might actually be looking to get me, or get Casterlieberung. It must be Casterlieberung, right? It cannot be about me. I mean, it'd be strange if it were that for me. I mean, who am I? I'm just an orphan from Nuln. Well, there's only one way to find out, I suppose. Any suggestions on what to do? I mean, you could just try and approach him at the pub over there and see if we can buy him a drink. I mean, he might not want to make a scene, right? He might even be willing to talk to us, and there'd be a lot of witnesses there, so he's unlikely to shoot us right there, at least.
Yeah, a lot of witnesses would also limit our ability to persuade him if it came to that.
That is also true.
What do you think, Siegfrieda?
I'm no tactician when it comes to battle. I'm more like the person who picks up the pieces afterwards. I would suggest, if we're going to have some kind of confrontation, we do it away from public eyes, just to minimise any potential damage to bystanders.
I suppose that is the responsible thing to do. Perhaps we can wait and see when he comes out. I can follow him and see if we can corner him somewhere away from people.
Corner him outside somewhere in an alley. If we find that he has a room at an inn, sneak in while he's sleeping. Anything, really. If he has brought a horse here, and he must have to have arrived so fast, he's got it stabled somewhere, so if we follow him to the horse, stables aren't always thick with traffic. I see it as we have a choice, and she basically reiterates what you've already said, but she likes to go through choices in her head. We can take the cover of knowing that he's unlikely to do anything terribly flagrant in front of passers-by, maybe the watch, but we lose out on the benefit of anything clandestine he may want to share with us, and risk other people getting harmed. On the flip side of that, if we confront him privately, he can do whatever he wants to try and get rid of us, without fear of retaliation if he succeeds. But on the other hand, I'm quite confident that if he does so, and the three of us die to some crossbowman with some kind of agenda, we're not going to be thinking too much about how much we regret that course of action if we are dead.
That's certainly one way of putting it. All right. Well, what do you think, Heinrich, then?
I think there are three of us, and one of him that we know of. He can't keep an eye on all of us the whole time. Why don't we split the difference? One of us, or a pair, could confront him in a public place, see what his initial offer or explanation is, while the other tracks down where he might be staying or how he might be leaving. You did want to steal a horse on the road, Kruger. There's no reason we couldn't do that plan.
That's true.
All I know is that I'm tired of letting them have the initiative, whoever them is.
That's true. Well, I mean, he's looking for me, seemingly. Perhaps. So, why don't myself and one of you confront him, and, well, one of you see if you can find out where he's staying.
So, Frida, how's your nose for secrets?
I'm interested, but I'm very much keen on staying at the back of you two strong gentlemen.
All right. Well, Siegfrieda, why don't you come with me and we'll see if we can talk to him. I mean, as I said, I don't think we'll have a confrontation in public space, so it should be relatively safe. Heinrich, you can see if you can find out where he's coming from and where he's staying.
Well then, let's start with Heinrich. Heinrich, what are you actually going to do? Are you going to attempt to just find a random person on the street and ask them questions? Are you going to try going into this inn? Maybe try and find another inn and ask questions there? And most importantly, are you going to tell any of this to Josef and his crew? After all, while you've been having this conversation, they've turned in for the night into the cabins of the boat.
My instinct would to be one of two places. Either one, I would like to gossip around a road warden outpost and see if they had any commentary about travelers moving with excessive haste. And failing that, the public stable, wherever someone would turn over their horse while they were visiting town. Perhaps there's a stable hand there or a paymaster who had just taken coin in exchange for an especially tired-looking animal.
Well, let's roll a gossip roll here. Let's see how you do. I'm going to give you a +10 because you are trying to cover quite a few places, but it's not super easy. This does take you quite some time, finding where the road wardens even are, finding local stables. It's not a big town, but still a sizable one.
Oh, well, thank you for the plus 10. That is a 40 under 43.
Well, you think on the outskirts of town, the closest thing to a road warden outpost, although when you question them, they kind of just give you blank stares and say, of course travellers have come here by horse, why wouldn't they? But you have a bit more luck when you start inquiring about stables, because you find out that the only inn in town that has a stable is the Trumpet Inn. And while there are obviously some stables for the road wardens and some stables for some other people, that's the only one that's an inn and a stable, just on the northeastern part of town, the Trumpet Inn. So, that could be a very good logical place for someone with a horse to stop off if they were only passing through the town.
I'll keep that information in my pocket for a moment. I will loop back around the boat. I do want to warn Yosef about what is happening, at the very least so he sets a watch or has someone with an eye out.
You do so. You find Yosef in his cabin. He says, "Hey lad, wait, I'm confused. What's going on? What? You think some people are gonna try and attack the boat? Steal the cargo? Is that it?"
I don't think they're here for the cargo. I think they're here for my unfortunate friend, if you'll recall the mistaken identity.
Really? I don't know, lad. That seems a little strange to me. After all, why would they be chasing him all the way down here?
Sigmar only knows.
Well, I suppose I can keep watch and get my crossbow out. Not that I'm very good with it, but I can certainly try. All right, then, I'll let the other two know, then. We'll keep a watch out a little longer in the evening. So what are you three doing?
We're going to find out who he is and what he wants. I suspect right now Siegfried and Kruger are getting whatever answers they can out of him in polite company.
Yosef gives a nod, but he does take a moment to clasp your shoulder firmly with his hand. Just be careful, lad. It's folks who are chasing after folks. It's never good. You never know what they're up to. You know what I mean? Especially if this is that crossbow fellow. Those were some good shots. The thing about crossbows is they take time to reload, but he apparently did it quite quickly with those two, if you remember.
That's what I'm concerned about. I will do my best to actually fill him with a little bit of confidence. I don't want Yosef worrying. I also don't want him taking things too lightly, but it's a narrow path to walk. And I'll say, with Bogenhauer's blessing, we'll see the night through.
He gives you a firm nod, goes to collect his crossbow, and tells both Grim, who just nods, and Walder, who gives you a firm pat on the shoulder as well, that don't worry, we'll be watching the boat. Meanwhile, in the tavern that our two other characters enter, which you would be able to tell, being able to read Siegfrieda, that it is the Black Gold Inn, you notice a few things very quickly. Number one, this inn does not have a stable, so there are no horses here. And unfortunately, Kruger, the man isn't here. You begin looking round. There's a few dwarves playing a card game at a table. There's a old lady halfling smoking a pipe. There's a lovely raven-haired woman running the bar, but he's not here. You do a very quick look around the establishment. It's quite open plan. You do notice, however, there is a back door to this place.
Yeah, that's where he must have gone. I looked at Siegfrieda. Oh, he's not here. I mean, he might come back, but he might just have gone out the back door.
Well, let's just quickly check with the person at the bar, shall we?
Be my guest.
I'm sorry, my friend. I am feeling very much more cautious and nervous than I was when we initially set forth. The events that just preceded our departure and what may await us in Bogenhafen are weighing heavily on my mind, but I will do my best. I approach the bar. Excuse me.
The bartender comes over. Again, she has long, dark raven hair, seems about 30 or so, slightly dusky complexion, likely from either Tilia or Astalia, you think. She smiles and says, "Hello."
Well met to you. My friends and I have just arrived after a lengthy voyage. Well, not that lengthy in truth, only around 2, 3, 4 days. But nevertheless, we've arrived after a voyage, and we're expecting to meet up with some friends here. I was wondering if they happen to be staying. I can give you a description of one of the individuals we're looking for, if that might help.
Would you like to roll a charm test? Give yourself a plus 20, because this is quite a nice way of asking, and there's no reason to be suspicious of you.
Yeah, of course. So I'm needing to roll under 49, and I do it. I roll a 32.
She smiles warmly, quite clearly happy to speak to you, and also, it seems you've timed this quite well, because you notice there's no one else at the bar right now, so she has time to give you her full attention. Oh, I see. Any description of them? Who are you looking for, my dear?
I'll describe the individual who was seen spying us from while we were on the boat and unloading things.
Oh, yes. Oh, the very fearsome-looking fellow. Yes, big crossbow.
Oh, he's not so fearsome, but yes, that would be the man.
Ah, well, unfortunately, my dear, he's not staying here. I think he'll be... Well, I think... He did say something about having ridden into town recently when he came to order his ale. Possibly the Trumpet Inn? That's normally where people go when they, have horses and they're travelling through town. We don't have a stable here, sadly.
So you have made his acquaintance?
Well, he didn't say much. Again, he seemed rather grim to me. Possibly, though, I don't know, he had the look of a bounty hunter to me. I think I saw some manacles around his belt.
Oh, no, he isn't. He's actually a bit of a jester. If you see him, and by all means tell the others who work here. He's a jongleur. He goes around pretending to be this grizzled bounty hunter, scowling at everyone. Then he trips and falls, makes a fool of himself. We affectionately call him Little Cock. I am sure that if you were to do the same, that would send him off on one of his routines where he would start blustering and acting quite the comedian. But I do appreciate... one other thing. You said he had ridden into town. That's something I've been wondering about. Is it ridden or rode?
Oh, well, I suppose that depends on what part of the Empire you're from. I like to say ridden.
I like to say ridden as well. I'm not sure which is correct, but thank you. That helps.
my pleasure. And how strange. You might want to tell him, though, he might need to liven up his act a little then, because, the whole time he was here, he just was staring out at the docks and staring at the wall, and that voice, it's not a very funny voice, is it?
No, well, he takes his role very seriously.
Oh, I see.
He doesn't like to, as they say, break character until someone who knows about the undercurrent, I suppose, the subterfuge, actually calls him out on it. And then, like a flash, it's time for him to perform. He will start tripping over his feet, he'll start swearing and blustering. You should hear some of the words that escape from his mouth. They would make your ears turn purple. When he loads the crossbow, he's not a very good shot, so I recommend ducking. Usually he'll shoot for comedy effect. But regardless...
Still, how exciting! Are you by any chance heading down to the Schaffenfest? Are you like a travelling troupe or something?
Oh, I'm sure I couldn't possibly say. We actors and performers like to keep our business discreet until the exact moment where it is time to launch an event. But what I will say is if you happen to see any of his friends around here, we are on the Berry Bell in dock. I have some silvers for you now. I slip her 3 of my 6 silvers. I will have another 3 silvers for you if you let me know if any of our other friends arrive. They'll be in Little Cock's company.
I see. Well, sure. I almost worry that I won't see him, but if you're going to give me silvers, I'm not going to complain. And Yes, of course. I'll do my best. I can say for sure that it's definitely good to have someone like that around who looks like that. It must help with some of the troubles that are on the rivers. If you've been travelling by river, I keep hearing terrible things.
You don't know the half of it, but honestly, he's a gentle puppy. He looks fierce, he looks dangerous, but the best way to treat him is, as I say, as a comedian, as a fool. But what's more, don't tell him. I think he already knows that we're here, but don't tell him which boat we're on. It'll be much more fun if we get to surprise him and make him look like a complete idiot.
Oh, of course, and have a lovely evening. Are you sure I can't interest you in some food, at least? For you are giving me silvers.
Well, I have already passed you 3 silvers, and I need to be careful with my money. But no, we do need to see if we can find him. So we'll check in the trumpet. If he isn't there, we'll return for something to fill our stomachs.
She nods. Kruger, while this is all happening, you just happen to notice Heinrich beginning to poke his head in from the entrance. What do?
I've been looking around, just trying to get a feel for the clientele here, trying to figure out if any one of them might be connected to this group, looking for purple gloves or, well, anything that might hint at something connected to this conspiracy that I'm finding myself in. Do I notice anything about the people in here, or do they just seem like regular, well, people who would be in an inn?
They do seem regular to you. There's the dwarves playing cards. None of them have purple on them. There's an old lady halfling who gives you a bit of an odd look as you give her an odd look, but then she just laughs to herself. She's probably smoking something that's making her quite happy. And other than that, the inn is not very busy at this time of the evening, actually. Maybe the other inns are more busy. But it seems prudent to check. After all, you do find yourself thinking, this must be connected, it has to be connected, and maybe it's even connected to... Well, what if it wasn't just connected to Castor? What if it was connected to you? What if it's something to do with Middenheim? You didn't leave Middenheim well, but no one should have known you left. No one was left alive, after all. So how could it be connected to that? But maybe it is.
It certainly could be. I mean, there are so many strange things afoot here, and there's a lot of real violence that is happening here. And, well, if it's connected to what happened over there, then I'm worried. I'm worried about what kind of danger I might be in, but I'm also worried about the danger that my new companions might be in. I mean, I'm in this for myself, of course, but they've been very kind, you know? It's not often that you meet people who will be kind to you, you know? Who aren't just looking out for themselves. So I want to make sure that they don't get into any trouble. And I'll look to Heinrich then, if he's coming in.
Heinrich, you enter the Black Gold Inn. You see your 2 companions. What do? It seems you have a little bit of information to share with each other.
Indeed, I will, wrapped up in the clandestine moment, once I've made eye contact with Kruger, do a pantomime of someone playing a trumpet, as subtly as possible, which I'm guessing is not very subtle, considering Heinrich.
Yes, Kruger, you see Heinrich do a very strange gesture. Perhaps he's trying to do one of his gang symbols at you again.
This one is not that bad, actually. This one's safe, but the movements are a little bit off still. Have I overheard what Siegfrieda have been talking about with the barkeep?
You have indeed.
Well, in that case, hopefully I can put 2 and 2 together and connect it with the word trumpet, right?
Trumpet in, yes, that would be logical.
I'll approach Heinrich then, and also look to Siegfrieda to see if she's finished with her conversation.
I will, quickly say to the barmaid, gesturing over at my companion there, you see, this is one of the mimes in our troupe. Very good at imitating playing the musical instrument.
Oh my goodness, I haven't seen a good mime since I was a little girl, back home in Estalia.
You still haven't, but he's good at musical instruments, and that's about it. You should see him pretend to play the drums. It's quite something. I mean, it's only one big drum that he pretends is strapped to his chest, and then he just flails his arms around, but children love him. But I must go if he's here. It means there's business to attend to. As I say, we may return for food.
What do the three of you do as you reconvene and share the information you have gathered about the Trumpet Inn?
Get it? Trumpetin'? Like trumpeting? Trumpetin'? Trumpet Inn? Eh?
Oh. Yeah. Huh. I wonder if that's on purpose.
Well, that's what I've managed to figure out. It's the only place that has stables. The road wardens didn't notice anything out of the ordinary.
Well, then that's probably where he would be. What did you find out, Siegfried?
Much the same. He isn't staying here, but he appears to be a rather angry, unpleasant kind of individual who hefts a weighty crossbow about, speaks in a voice that, an accent that implies he is not from round these parts.
So, what are the three of you going to do? As you have your conversation, the sun finally sets and evening falls on the town of Weissbruck. It is now dark. Obviously, lots of buildings are lit by torchlight, and there are the occasional patrols on the streets, but it is a lot quieter now as people flock to the buildings of the inns, and a little bit of a mist comes in from the River Bogan.
Well, we know where he is then, so do we still want to seek him out? Do we still want to learn? Or do we feel like we've learned enough about him and his potential danger?
Well, the issue is, if we don't address the issue now, much like an infection, if not properly treated, it will only spread. And in our case, that means he could follow us, maybe enlist some companions. Again, I would like to be the first to say, even if I've said it once before, I am not bloodthirsty. I don't feel we should be ending lives without a second thought. But if this man is posing a danger to us, purely based on your appearance, we need to somehow dissuade him or stop that thought from occurring in his head.
Indeed, I certainly don't want to live the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering if people like him, or even him, are there.
I do know some experimental surgeries that could potentially remove that thought from his head, but they can also result in death more often than not. I think we need to make our way into this inn quietly, discreetly, because he could be there in the common room. We don't want to cause a ruckus. Ultimately, we need to find out where he's staying, where his room is, because, as I mentioned before, let's try and keep the collateral damage down to a minimum.
Agreed. Let's do that then. So I suppose we'll begin moving towards the Trumpet Inn then, seeing if we can locate this individual.
And so the three of you begin to make your way through the night streets, trying to be discreet, which luckily isn't too difficult considering it is now night. And you begin to make your way to the Trumpet Inn, hoping to make a rendezvous with an individual who may wish you harm, or may simply wish to talk. You'll only know when you finally encounter them.
You have listened to an episode of Red Moon Roleplaying, where we play the legendary campaign The Enemy Within for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th Edition, published by Cubicle 7. In this first part of the series, we are tackling Book 1, Enemy in Shadows. Joining us as players in this series are none other than Aaron Hammonds from Queen's Court Games and our dear friend Matthew Dawkins. The music was made by Flowers for Body Snatchers, Word Clock, Metatron Omega, Agersonus, Apocryphus, Halgrath, and Northumbria, featuring a number of collaborations with other artists, and was used with permission from their label, Cryochamber. Check out their website at cryochamber.bandcamp.com or their YouTube channel for some moody dark ambient for your gaming table. We would like to give massive thanks to our champions of the Red Moon, Martin Heuschober, Nastasia Raulerson, Simon Cooper, David, Julia, Camilla, Ludwig Manford, Bob Lange, Julián, Cameron, Xabier, and Antxon for their generous support. And we'd of course also like to thank all of our other patrons. Without your support, the show would not be possible. If you want to support our work, please check us out on Patreon. You can get access to bonus campaigns for Cult of Divinity Lost and Coriolis there, as well as get early and raw access to all of our recordings. You can also hear your name read on the show as a champion of the Red Moon, as well as play Cult with us. Most importantly, that support is what keeps the show going, so do check us out there. Thank you again for listening, and remember, Skaven are definitely not real.